Instructor Vexthera stood at her command console in the Galactic Academy's Advanced Survival Training Facility, her iridescent scales shifting from their usual calm blue to an agitated purple as she reviewed the class roster for the 1000th time. In her 3 centuries of teaching the galaxy's most challenging survival course, she had never encountered such an administrative error. Computer, verify species classification. Human. Count. 3, she commanded, her secondary breathing chambers constricting with anxiety. The holographic display cheerfully confirmed what she had been dreading. Somehow, 3 Class 12 Deathworlders had been assigned to her course. The massive training chamber behind her observation window hummed with potential energy, its environmental systems capable of recreating the deadliest conditions in known space. She had designed each challenge to push even the hardiest species to their limits. But humans, this was going to be problematic. The facility's doors hissed open right on schedule. First entered the crystalline delegation, their silicon-based forms refracting morning light into delicate patterns. Next came the methane brothers in their environmental suits, followed by the energy beings contained within their stabilization fields. All standard students, all appropriately nervous about the legendary course. Then the humans walked in. Sarah Chen, former Antarctic Research Station manager, was carrying what appeared to be a backpack full of snacks. Behind her, James Rodriguez, whose application listed hobby spelunker in active volcanoes, was already examining the chamber's reinforced walls with professional interest. The third human, Maya Patel, supposedly retired from something called extreme urban exploration, was casually doing stretching exercises. "Welcome to Advanced Survival Training," Vexthera announced, trying to keep her voice steady. "You stand before the most challenging course in the Academy's history. Over the next 3 cycles, you will face conditions that have broken the strongest warriors and—" "Quick question." Sarah raised her hand, grinning. "Are we allowed to bring our own gear? Because I packed my -100-degree sleeping bag, and James brought his lava-proof boots." Vexthera's scales flickered to a confused green. "That won't be necessary. The chamber will provide all required." "Oh hey," James interrupted, pointing at the environmental readouts. "Maya, check this out. They can simulate up to 15 times standard gravity. Reminds me of that gym back in Houston." The crystalline delegates vibrated in horror at the casual mention of such crushing forces. One of the methane brothers made a sound like a distressed balloon deflating. "If I could continue," Vexthera tried again. "Today's first challenge will test your ability to survive in extreme gravitational conditions. Many students find this to be the most psychologically daunting." "Sorry to interrupt again," Maya said, still stretching, "but is it cool if we film this? My old urban explorer followers would love to see these setups. The architecture is amazing." Vexthera's scales had settled into a sort of defeated gray. "The challenge will begin in 3 minutes. Please enter the chamber and prepare yourselves mentally for conditions that most beings would consider." She trailed off as the humans had already bounded into the chamber, chatting excitedly about something called Parker opportunities, and comparing the walls to various Earth structures they had climbed for fun. The other students followed more cautiously, their species' various forms of body language all conveying the same mixture of terror and fascination at their human classmates' behavior. As the chamber's gravity began to increase, Vexthera watched in disbelief as the humans not only remained standing, but appeared to be organizing some sort of impromptu workout session. "Come on, everyone," Sarah called out to their struggling classmates. "The extra gravity makes for great resistance training. Maya, show them that move you learned in the Jupiter simulation chamber." "Computer," Vexthera muttered, "begin recording personal log. Day 1 observations. I believe I may need to completely reconceptualize the definition of survival training. Also research what a Jupiter is and why anyone would voluntarily simulate its conditions." The next 3 hours redefined everything Vexthera thought she knew about species resilience. The humans treated crushing gravity as a fitness opportunity, demonstrated various techniques for moving efficiently in high-G environments, and somehow convinced two of the energy beings to join what they called a weighted yoga session. When the chamber finally returned to standard gravity, the humans emerged looking invigorated. The rest of the class had to be helped out by medical drones. "That was awesome," James exclaimed, helping a wobbly crystalline student regain their balance. "What's tomorrow's challenge?" "Please tell me. It involves extreme temperatures. I've been dying to test out these new thermal regulation techniques I learned from some Venusian colonists." Vexthera's scales had given up trying to match her emotions and settled for a sort of exhausted beige. "Class dismissed," she announced weakly. "Tomorrow's session will probably need to be redesigned completely." As the students filed out, she could hear Sarah explaining something about Earth's variable gravity zones to a fascinated group of methane breathers. The fact that she appeared to be completely making this up, yet still somehow providing useful high-gravity survival techniques, only made Vexthera's head hurt more. "Computer," she added to her log, "send urgent memo to Academy Board. Subject: immediate curriculum review needed. Additional note: request information on Earth's variable gravity zones and why we were never warned about this species' apparently casual relationship with fundamental physical forces." In the corridor outside, Maya was already setting up a social media livestream. Her followers apparently very excited about what she called Space Parker Extreme Edition. James had drawn a small crowd with his impromptu lecture on lava swimming techniques, while Sarah was distributing high-gravity snacks she had somehow brought just in case. Vexthera looked down at tomorrow's planned challenge involving toxic atmospheres and magnetic storms. Somehow, she had a feeling the humans would probably consider it a light workout. She was beginning to understand why Earth was classified as a death world. Not because it was particularly deadly, but because it had produced a species that treated deadly conditions as an entertaining pastime. "Computer," she added one final note, "begin research on human recreational activities. I have a disturbing feeling we've been underestimating the wrong aspect of this species." The sound of Sarah organizing a high-gravity dance party for the weekend drifted through her office door. Vexthera's scales made one last attempt at changing color before settling on a permanent shade of confused resignation. This was going to be a very, very long term. Vexthera arrived early the next morning to find her human students already waiting outside the training chamber, equipped with what appeared to be primitive breathing apparatus and handheld sensors. Her scales shifted to a concerned orange when she noticed they were excitedly comparing what they called pollution readings from their home cities. Back in Beijing, James was explaining to a horrified group of crystalline students, "We had to check the air quality index every morning to decide how many masks to wear. Some days were only 2 mask days, but during peak season." He sighed nostalgically. Sarah pulled up some historical images on her device. "That's nothing. Remember the Great Smog of London? Now that was properly toxic atmosphere. Makes these training simulations look like a fresh mountain breeze." "Students," Vexthera announced, trying to regain control of the situation. "Today's challenge involves survival in Class 8 toxic environments. The chamber will be filled with a mixture of corrosive gases, radioactive particles, and, oh, like New Jersey." Maya interrupted cheerfully. "I did an urban exploration series there. The abandoned industrial zones have some amazing chemical combinations. Really keeps you on your toes." The energy beings pulsed with concern, their containment fields flickering anxiously. One of the methane breathers appeared to be trying to add extra filters to their environmental suit. "The protective equipment provided must be worn at all times," Vexthera continued firmly, her scales now a determined purple. "The atmosphere inside would dissolve conventional respiratory systems in seconds." The humans exchanged glances. "About that," Sarah said, raising her hand. "We brought our own gear. Standard Earth urban exploration kit. Much more flexible than those bulky suits." "Absolutely not." Vexthera's scales flashed warning red. The chamber will contain concentrations of hydrofluoric acid vapor that will... Oh, is that all? James perked up. That's way better than what we dealt with during that chemical plant investigation. Remember, Maya, when your hazmat suit got that tiny tear? Good times, Maya nodded. Only needed minor lung regeneration. These modern nanomids are amazing. The rest of the class had begun backing away slowly. A crystalline student was vibrating at a frequency that suggested imminent stress fractures. The protective suits are mandatory. Vexthera insisted. No exceptions. This is not a request. This is a safety protocol that. But the humans had already started helping each other into their personal protective equipment, which seemed to consist mainly of masks that looked woefully inadequate and what they called the good filters. Don't worry, Professor, Sarah assured her, voice slightly muffled behind her mask. We've got emergency protocols. If the air gets too spicy, we'll put on the backup masks. Too spicy, Vexthera repeated weakly. Yeah, you know that burning sensation when the acid starts eating through your first filter. James demonstrated with enthusiastic hand gestures. That's how you know it's time to switch to backup. Basic survival stuff. The chamber's environmental systems hummed to life, beginning the process of creating what Vexthera had previously considered a lethally hostile atmosphere. The humans watched the gas mixture readings with what could only be described as professional interest. Fascinating blend, Maya commented, consulting one of her sensors. The sulfur dioxide levels are a bit low, though. Could barely qualify for a Category 3 industrial accident back home. The other students, properly sealed in their protective suits, entered the chamber with appropriate caution. The humans bounded in like they were attending a festival, already setting up what they called air quality monitoring stations and discussing the aesthetic potential of the corrosive fog. What followed was 3 hours of what Vexthera could only describe as organized chaos. The humans not only completed all assigned survival tasks, but turned the exercise into what they called a toxic atmosphere masterclass. See, the trick with acid fog, Sarah lectured to a group of trembling students, is to use it to your advantage. The corrosion patterns can tell you a lot about wind currents and safe zones. James had somehow rigged up a makeshift chemical analysis system using spare parts and was giving impromptu lessons on reading the bouquet of different toxic combinations. It's like wine tasting, he explained cheerfully, except it's more about which internal organs might need attention afterward. Maya, meanwhile, had started a documentary series she called Extreme Environments, Academy Edition, complete with professional-looking footage of the various lethal gas formations. Computer, Vexthera dictated to her log. Update required reading materials for next term. Add. Historical human industrial accidents. A survival guide. And understanding Earth's urban air quality. Why everything we know about toxicity might be wrong. As the chamber slowly cleared, the humans emerged looking disappointed. That's it? Sarah asked, already removing her mask. We were hoping for something a bit more challenging. Maybe some nice nerve agents or at least some heavy metals. There's always tomorrow, Maya consoled her, packing up her camera equipment. I heard something about extreme temperature variations. Could be fun. The rest of the class had to be treated for psychological stress, despite their protective suits having functioned perfectly. The mere sight of humans casually discussing lethal atmospheres like weather patterns had apparently been too much. One more thing, James approached Vexthera's console. We were thinking of organizing a little field trip this weekend. There's this lovely sulfuric acid geyser field about 50 kilometers from campus. Great place for practical experience. Would that count as extra credit? Vexthera's scales had run out of colors to express her emotional state. Class dismissed, she managed, already drafting another memo to the Academy Board. This one would be titled, Urgent, Redefining Terms Toxic and Lethal in Light of Human Recreational Activities. As the humans left, chattering about something called urban spelunking, and comparing their favorite industrial disaster zones, Vexthera realized she needed to completely rebuild her understanding of environmental hazards. Computer, she added to her log. Final note. Begin research into Earth's historical industrial development. Critical question. Did humans develop resistance to toxic environments, or did toxic environments learn to fear humans first? The sound of Sarah organizing a vintage gas mask appreciation club echoed down the corridor. Somewhere, a crystalline student's stress harmonics reached frequencies previously thought impossible. Tomorrow was the temperature challenge. Vexthera had a feeling she should start recalibrating the chamber's limits now. Somehow, she suspected that her definition of extreme heat was about to get another dramatic revision. Vexthera arrived at the training facility to find her human students engaged in what appeared to be a heated debate about something called weather gatekeeping. Her scales rippled with preemptive concern. All I'm saying, James was gesturing enthusiastically, is that until you've experienced a Texas summer followed by a Minnesota winter in the same day, you haven't really lived. Please, Sarah scoffed, unpacking what looked like both winter gear and cooling equipment. Try maintaining equipment in Antarctica during a whiteout. Then we'll talk about temperature swings. Maya was setting up multiple camera angles while consulting her weather monitoring devices. I once did an urban exploration series in Dubai. Middle of summer, power went out in the building we were documenting. Now that was proper heat. The other students, still traumatized from yesterday's toxic atmosphere challenge, were maintaining a safe distance. One of the energy beings had developed a nervous flicker. Today's exercise, Vexthera announced, trying to sound authoritative, will test your ability to survive extreme temperature variations. The chamber will cycle between -70 and +60 degrees standard. She waited for the usual gasps of horror. Instead, the humans looked mildly disappointed. Only -70. Sarah checked her thermal gear. Hardly worth unpacking the serious cold weather equipment. Back home, James added helpfully, we call that spring break weather in some places. A crystalline student emitted a high-pitched harmonic that suggested imminent structural failure. The temperature shifts will occur rapidly, Vexthera continued, her scales now cycling through warning colors. Most species find the sudden changes extremely disorienting and, oh, like Chicago. Maya brightened. Remember that viral video from last year? People were grilling in shorts, then shoveling snow in the same Instagram story. The protective thermal suits are mandatory, Vexthera insisted, seeing the humans eyeing their own equipment. The rapid temperature fluctuations can cause severe systemic shock. About that, Sarah raised her hand. We brought our own gear. Standard Earth all-weather kit. Much more practical than those bulky thermal suits. The chamber hummed to life, beginning its temperature cycle. The other students hurriedly sealed themselves into their protective equipment. The humans, meanwhile, were laying out what they called a weather party setup. Who's up for some extreme temperature sports? James called out, somehow already shirtless in the heat cycle. We can do hot yoga during the warm spells and ice sculpture during the cold snaps. What followed was 3 hours that fundamentally challenged Vexthera's understanding of thermal adaptation. The humans not only completed their survival tasks, but turned the whole exercise into what they called a 4-seasons appreciation session. During the heat cycles, they demonstrated various cooling techniques, ranging from traditional desert survival methods to what they called construction worker lunch break strategies. Sarah had somehow produced a device that made frozen treats, sharing them with their thoroughly confused classmates. When the temperature plummeted, they switched seamlessly to cold weather activities. James taught impromptu classes on ice climbing techniques, while Maya documented what she called extreme weather parkour. The trick to rapid temperature changes, Sarah lectured, helping a shivering methane breather adjust their thermal controls, is to treat it like a normal Tuesday in Melbourne. Pack for all seasons, always carry sunscreen and ice cleats, and never trust the weather forecast. Computer, Vexthera dictated to her log. Update curriculum materials. Add Earth Weather Patterns, a study in chaos, and why human weather reports include something called feels like temperature. The humans had started organizing what they called temperature tourism trips for their classmates. "We're thinking of starting with some nice mild extremes," Maya explained. "Maybe a quick visit to Death Valley followed by a hop over to Siberia. Really basic stuff for beginners. Just wait until we introduce them to monsoon season," James added enthusiastically. Or better yet, tornado chasing. The rest of the class had developed a sort of resigned fascination. The energy beings were particularly interested in what Sarah called the art of complaining about weather while completely ignoring it. As the final temperature cycle completed, the humans emerged looking refreshed. "That was nice," Maya commented, adjusting her camera equipment. "Kind of like a spa day, really. The temperature swings help keep you alert." Speaking of which, James approached Vexthera's console. "We're organizing a little extreme weather appreciation club. First meeting is this weekend at the local volcanic ice cave system. Great place for practicing rapid adaptation techniques." Vexthera's scales had settled into a permanent state of confused resignation. "Class dismissed," she announced, already composing her daily memo to the Academy Board. This one would be titled, "Urgent. Reviewing definition of extreme temperature ranges. Humans consider lethal conditions refreshing." As the humans left, discussing plans for what they called a proper weather challenge, involving something called hurricane surfing, Vexthera realized she needed to completely recalibrate her understanding of environmental adaptation. "Computer," she added to her final log entry, "begin research into Earth's climate history. Priority question. Did humans adapt to their planet's chaotic weather patterns, or did the weather simply give up trying to kill them?" The sound of Sarah organizing a polar plunge club echoed down the corridor, followed by what sounded suspiciously like plans for a volcanic hot spring expedition. Tomorrow was the Predator Challenge. Vexthera had a feeling she should start updating her xenobiology databases now. Something told her that her definition of apex predator was about to get another dramatic revision. Vexthera arrived at the training facility, clutching her fourth cup of stimulant beverage, her scales already preset to a resigned gray. She found her human students clustered around a holoprojector, enthusiastically sharing what they called wildlife encounter stories. "So there I was," Sarah was gesturing animatedly, face to face with a polar bear. "Biggest one I'd ever seen. You know what saved me? The emergency air horn. Bears hate those things." "Classic," James nodded sagely. "Though I still think my run-in with that mountain lion takes the cake. Did I ever tell you about the time I had to outclimb one up a tree?" Maya was, as usual, setting up her recording equipment. "Speaking of climbing, remember that documentary I shot about Australian drop bears? The locals kept insisting they weren't real, but better safe than sorry, right?" The other students had developed a sort of morbid fascination with these stories. An energy being had started taking notes on what they titled human survival logic. An oxymoron. "Today's challenge," Vexthera announced, trying to sound confident, "will test your responses to apex predator encounters. The chamber will simulate various dangerous life forms from across the galaxy." She pulled up the holographic displays of the day's challenges. A Venetian blade stalker, notorious for its molecular edge claws, a nebula phantom, known for hunting its prey across multiple dimensions, and a crimson void beast, whose very presence could induce terror paralysis. The humans looked positively delighted. Finally, Sarah exclaimed, pulling out what appeared to be primitive tracking equipment. "Some proper wildlife interaction. I was beginning to think this was just environmental challenges." "Quick question." James raised his hand, already checking something called GoPro mounts on his helmet. "Are we allowed to attempt communication with the specimens? Because I've been reading fascinating papers about potential interspecies diplomacy." "Communicate with?" Vexthera's scales flickered in disbelief. "These are apex predators. They're designed to be lethal. The standard protocol is to avoid engagement at all costs. Oh, like my aunt's cat. Maya nodded understandingly. Seriously, though, has anyone tried offering them snacks? Works surprisingly often with Earth predators. A crystalline student emitted a harmonic that perfectly matched the resonant frequency of pure confusion. The protective barriers are mandatory, Vexthera insisted, seeing the humans already planning what looked suspiciously like an approach strategy. Direct interaction with the specimens is strictly forbidden. About that, Sarah began, in what Vexthera was beginning to recognize as a warning tone. We brought some basic field research equipment. You know, standard Earth wildlife study kit. The chamber's biosimulation systems activated, materializing the first challenge. The Venetian blade stalker. Its chrome-edged claws gleamed as it materialized, its predatory grace striking fear into most of the observing students. The humans immediately pulled out their devices and started taking pictures. "Look at those biomechanical adaptations," James exclaimed, somehow already sketching what appeared to be a comparative anatomy study. "Reminds me of a cross between a velociraptor and a Swiss Army knife." What followed was 3 hours that fundamentally challenged Vexthera's understanding of predator-prey relationships. The humans not only completed their survival tasks, but turned the whole exercise into what they called an impromptu xenobiology field study. During the blade stalker phase, they demonstrated various evasion techniques while simultaneously collecting behavioral data. Sarah had somehow managed to create a makeshift tracking system and was giving an impromptu lecture on reading predator body language across species. When the nebula phantom appeared, shifting between dimensions, the humans treated it like some kind of cosmic hide-and-seek challenge. Maya documented what she called interdimensional parkour techniques, while James attempted to establish what he insisted was a basic communication framework using mathematical sequences. The trick with interdimensional predators, Sarah explained to their terrified classmates, is to think four-dimensionally. It's just like avoiding subway turnstiles during rush hour in New York. Computer, Vexthera dictated to her log. Update curriculum materials. Add human-wildlife interaction protocols. Why every other species' survival instincts might be wrong, and understanding Earth's food chain. A study in audacity. The Crimson Void Beast's terror field proved particularly interesting. The humans appeared to be completely immune, comparing it favorably to something they called Monday morning traffic. Not bad, Maya commented, adjusting her camera for better angles of the reality-warping horror. Though I've seen scarier things in Australian public restrooms. Speaking of which, James approached Vexthera's console. We're organizing a little xenobiology appreciation club. First meeting is this weekend at the local quantum anomaly fields. Great place for practicing multi-dimensional awareness. Vexthera's scales had given up trying to express emotions and settled for a sort of static background noise pattern. Class dismissed, she announced, already drafting her daily memo to the Academy Board. This one would be titled, Urgent. Redefining Apex Predator Status. Humans attempt to befriend everything that tries to kill them. As the humans left, enthusiastically discussing plans for what they called extreme wildlife photography and comparing notes on various predator encounter techniques, Vexthera realized she needed to completely reconsider her understanding of predator-prey dynamics. Computer, she added to her final log entry, begin research into Earth's evolutionary history. Priority question. Did humans become apex predators, or did they just convince everything else it wasn't worth the effort to eat them? The sound of Sarah organizing the Xenobiology Appreciation Society echoed down the corridor, followed by what sounded suspiciously like plans for a multi-dimensional safari expedition. Tomorrow was the final challenge, combining all previous elements. Vexthera had already started drafting her retirement papers. Something told her that her entire understanding of survival training was about to undergo one final dramatic revision. Vexthera stood before the Academy Board, her scales cycling through various shades of professional concern, as she presented her final report. The massive display behind her showed footage from the past few weeks, including highlights such as humans doing yoga in crushing gravity fields and offering snacks to interdimensional predators. Distinguished board members, she began, I come before you today to propose a complete overhaul of our survival training curriculum. Recent events have made it clear that our definition of extreme conditions may need significant revision. The footage changed to show Sarah Chen leading an impromptu class on advanced toxic atmosphere parkour, while James Rodriguez demonstrated proper form for low-gravity breakdancing. But before we discuss the curriculum changes, Vexthera continued, I invite you to observe today's final examination. The screen switched to a live feed from the training chamber. Today's challenge combined every element from the previous tests: crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme temperatures, and apex predators, all randomly cycling in various combinations. It was designed to be impossible to fully master, a lesson in knowing one's limitations. The humans had turned it into a party. Check out this gravity-assisted backflip through acid fog. Maya's voice came through the speakers as she demonstrated said maneuver while simultaneously documenting it for her now viral Extreme Academy series. The toxic particles really add to the visual effect. Sarah had somehow convinced a nebula phantom to participate in what she called interdimensional tag, while teaching a group of crystalline students about proper momentum conservation in variable gravity fields. The real trick, James was explaining to some energy beings, while casually dodging a void beast's terror field, is to treat every environmental hazard as a potential advantage. Like how the extreme cold snap coming up in 30 seconds will make the acid fog crystallize into really cool patterns. The board members watched in stunned silence as the humans not only survived, but appeared to be genuinely enjoying conditions that their simulations had classified as universally lethal. We've had to recalibrate our understanding of several fundamental concepts, Vexthera explained, her scales settling into a pattern that could only be described as academic resignation. For instance, what most species consider extreme weather appears to be, in human terms, a nice day for a picnic. The display showed footage of the humans organizing what they called Void Beast Appreciation Hour, while simultaneously conducting a masterclass on multi-dimensional evasion techniques in variable gravity conditions. More importantly, Vexthera continued, they've completely transformed the way other students approach survival challenges. Observe. The screen shifted to show a methane breather successfully navigating a toxic atmosphere using what they called the New Jersey method. Nearby, an energy being was teaching a crystalline student about proper thermal regulation through interpretive dance, a technique that, surprisingly, showed remarkable results. In just a few weeks, Vexthera noted, overall class performance has improved by 300%. Though I should note that 40% of that improvement comes from students simply following the humans' example of treating lethal conditions as, and I quote, a fun afternoon workout. The board chamber's screens filled with training data, survival rates, and something the humans had introduced called style points. In every metric, the results were unprecedented. Therefore, Vexthera concluded, I propose the following changes. First, reclassifying all current extreme conditions as moderate. Second, introducing new categories of environmental challenges based on Earth standards. And third, she paused, her scales flickering briefly to amused purple, officially adding having fun as a graded metric in survival evaluation. The board members watched as the humans finished their final exam by organizing what appeared to be a zero-gravity, multi-dimensional dance party in toxic atmosphere. Somehow, they had convinced two void beasts to act as DJs. Additionally, Vexthera added, I recommend immediate research into Earth's entertainment industry. I have a strong suspicion that what most species consider survival horror scenarios, humans consider light recreational activities. The footage showed Sarah teaching a blade stalker how to play fetch in crushing gravity, while Maya documented James's attempt to create what he called extreme condition ice sculptures, using crystallized acid fog in vacuum conditions. In conclusion, Vexthera's scales settled into a calm blue of acceptance. I believe we must acknowledge that our previous understanding of survival may have been somewhat limited. The humans have shown us that not only can seemingly impossible conditions be survived, but they can also be turned into educational opportunities, social events, and, most surprisingly, entertainment. The final footage showed the humans organizing what they called a graduation party that somehow combined all lethal conditions into what they described as a proper challenge. Finally, they had even created commemorative t-shirts reading, "I survived survival class," and all I got was this acid-resistant t-shirt. "Any questions?" Vexthera asked the board. One member raised a tentacle. "Yes, what exactly is this Parker they keep mentioning? And why do they insist on doing it in every lethal environment we create?" Before Vexthera could answer, Sarah's voice came through the speakers again. "Hey, Professor, quick question. For next term's advanced class, could we maybe add some antimatter storms? James found this great spot in the quantum anomaly fields that would be perfect for extreme condition surfing." Vexthera's scales cycled through every known color before settling on a new shade that could only be described as human-induced enlightenment. "Perhaps," she told the board, "we should begin by accepting that our definition of survival may need to be more flexible. Computer, update Academy classification. Humans are no longer to be considered Deathworlders." She paused, watching as Maya taught a void beast how to take selfies. Instead, classify them as extreme survival enthusiasts. Though personally, she added in a lower voice, I prefer the term chaos-adapted adrenaline enthusiasts, who occasionally teach survival skills. The sound of James planning next term's Extreme Condition Appreciation Club echoed through the chamber. Somewhere in the background, a crystalline student was explaining to their parents why they had signed up for something called Void Beast parkour lessons. The universe, Vexthera reflected, would never be quite the same. And somehow that seemed exactly like the kind of chaos humans would enjoy.